Kaido blinked up at a sky that pulsed like a bruise, lavender clouds swirling above a horizon that made no sense. The air tasted like moss and morning dew, even though his mouth was dry as dust. He pushed himself up, feeling dirt crumble beneath his fingertips, warm, soft, and humming faintly. Definitely not earth. His fingers flexed, calloused. His arms, lean and scarred in a way he didn't recognize. His body felt older, stronger, like a life had been lived without him. A breeze rustled the tall grass surrounding him, shimmering faintly with flecks of light. In the distance stood a crooked shack, barely more than planks and stubborn nails. Beyond that, trees twisted in spirals, and a hill where a giant root jutted into the air like a petrified serpent. What the hell? His voice cracked, raw. No phone, no shoes. Just a ragged tunic, trousers, and a satchel filled with. He opened it, one metal hoe, a single seed glowing faintly green, and a folded note written in looping script. Grow something real. K. Ren stared. The name stirred something. His name? Maybe. Behind him, something clucked. A chicken stood on a rock, head tilted. It had a ribbon around its neck. It spoke. Finally woke up. Huh? Took you long enough. We've got weeds to kill and dirt to tame, farmer. Ren didn't even scream. He just closed his eyes and exhaled slowly through his nose. Okay, so I died. Again. Ren followed the talking chicken. Well, more like stumbled after it as it strutted confidently through the glowing grass. The shack looked no better up close. One sneeze from collapsing. The door screeched as he pushed it open, revealing a single room, dust-drenched and spider-webbed. Home sweet home, the chicken said, hopping onto a barrel. You'll want the hoe. And probably a tetanus shot, but we don't have those. Ren found the hoe leaning against the wall. The wooden handle was cracked, the metal bent and rusting, but it was real. Tangible. He tested its weight, nodded once, then blinked at the chicken. I'm not hallucinating, right? You're actually talking. Yup. Name's Cluxworth. Last familiar of the Green Root Keeper. Which is you now? Congrats. Big honor. Low pay. Ren looked around again. There was a small cot, a cracked window, a table missing 2 legs, and a lantern with no wick. This place looks like it gave up on living. Cluxworth clucked. So did you, apparently. Ren squinted. Excuse me. Relax, I read souls. Yours reeked of burnout, self-loathing, and instant noodles. Classic, earth burnout turned reincarnated farmer package. He sighed and rubbed his face. And what exactly am I supposed to do? Farm. Obviously. Fix the land. Feed the forest. Grow something real. Ren looked down at the hoe in his hand. It vibrated faintly, like it wanted to dig. He exhaled and stepped outside. The grass seemed to watch him. As Ren stepped back into the field, the sky shimmered like glass hit by sunlight. A soft chime echoed clear, crystalline, and out of place. Something drifted down from the clouds. A seed, not the one in his satchel. This one glowed gold, spinning lazily through the air like a dandelion puff. It hovered before his eyes, pulsing. Cluxworth squawked and dove behind him. Duck. Too late. The seed zipped forward and struck Kaido square between the eyes. Everything flashed white. Suddenly, he wasn't standing in the field. He was floating in a weightless void filled with vines, floating soil chunks, and oversized turnips orbiting like moons. A tiny glowing sprite hovered in front of him, arms crossed, a smug grin on her face. She wore a leaf dress and a mushroom hat. Yo, she chirped. Welcome, farmer. I'm Sprig, your tutorial spirit. Please don't die. I'll try, Kaido muttered. You've inherited 1 hectare of magically tainted soil, a rundown shack, and exactly 1 half-sane chicken. Lucky you. Your mission is to restore this land to its legendary verdant state. Legendary what? Tealdar. Grow good stuff. Fix the cursed dirt. Heal the land's soul. Oh, and maybe don't dig too deep. The last guy found a carnivorous yam. The void shimmered. Sprig winked. Anyway, that's your exposition. I'll pop up when you're confused or about to do something dumb. Later. Snap thought he was back in the field, blinking in the sun. The golden seed was gone. Cluxworth peeked around him. Yup, you met her. She's a lot. Ren looked at the hoe again. This land better be worth it. The hoe felt heavier now. Not just rust and splinters expectation. The dirt shimmered under the sunlight, almost like it was daring him. Ren found a small patch near the shack. Just a few square feet of relatively flat land. He planted his feet, raised the hoe, and brought it down with a grunt. Thunk. The ground resisted. He swung again. Harder. Thunk. Then the earth screamed. It wasn't a vibration. It wasn't wind. It was a genuine, human-like wail, bubbling up from the soil like the dirt itself was in pain. Ren dropped the hoe and stumbled back. What? Clucksworth flapped wildly. You absolute idiot. That's cursed soil. You could have mentioned that before I tried to dig. I thought the glowing moss would clue you in. A ripple ran through the field. The small patch of turned earth pulsed red, then black, before settling into a dull gray. Ren approached slowly. The hoe still buzzed faintly on the ground beside him. So what? It's haunted? Cursed, Clucksworth corrected. Some ancient war? Long story? Blah blah blah. This land's been asleep a long time, and it doesn't like being woken up wrong. Ren stared at the cracked dirt. He barely scratched the surface, and it screamed like a banshee. What now? You'll need a blessing, Clucksworth muttered. A proper ritual to purify the soil. And where do I get that? The chicken gave him a sidelong glance. You dance. Ren blinked. I'm sorry. What? Kaido was still processing the phrase, you dance, when a voice rang out behind him. Either you're summoning demons, or you're just bad at farming. He turned. A girl stood at the edge of the field, arms crossed, one eyebrow arched with surgical precision. She had sharp eyes the color of pine needles and a braid long enough to trip someone on purpose. Her boots were caked in dried mud, and her cloak was patched with what looked suspiciously like stitched leaves. Elvin, Clucksworth whispered. Be cool. They're testy. The girl stepped closer, giving Kaido a once-over that made him feel like a defective shovel. You're the new keeper? Ren blinked. I think. She made a face. Figures. Human. You've already damaged the land. The soil's bleeding, you know. I didn't mean to. Intent doesn't matter. Consequences do. She knelt beside the cursed patch, tracing a finger along the ashen crack. Her fingertip glowed faintly as the soil hissed, then calmed. She stood, brushing off her hands. You're going to have to bless it. Yeah, I heard. Something about dancing. She smirked. Oh, you're doing that ritual. Hilarious. Ren frowned. You've done it before? Nope. Just excited to watch someone else humiliate themselves. She tossed him a small, glowing mushroom. Use that during the dance. Trust me, it'll help. Or make things worse. Hard to say. Thanks. Don't thank me. I might be here to steal your crops later. And with that, she turned and walked off. Clucksworth clucked. Welcome to Greenroot. Night fell quickly in Greenroot. The stars were unnervingly close, like someone had spilled glowing marbles across a velvet ceiling. Ren stood alone in the field, clutching the mushroom the elf girl gave him. It pulsed softly in his palm, warm and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Clucksworth watched from a fence post, eyes gleaming. You ready? No, good. That's how most great blessings start. The cursed patch lay quiet, waiting. Ren took a breath. So, what exactly do I do? Clucksworth hopped down. You step into the soil circle. You hold the mushroom high. And you dance with conviction. No half measures. The land can smell doubt. That's not helpful. It's also not my fault. With a sigh, Kaido stepped forward. The cursed ground was cold and slightly sticky. He raised the mushroom. The wind stopped. The stars brightened. And then, music. Soft at first, pipes and drums from nowhere, echoing around him like ghosts remembering how to celebrate. He moved. Badly. Arms flailing, legs offbeat, stumbling into shapes that felt ancient and vaguely illegal. The mushroom began to glow brighter with each step, casting light on his wide-eyed panic. Somewhere in the distance, someone laughed. The elf girl. Of course she was watching. Ren slipped, nearly fell, but caught himself in a half-spin that somehow didn't break his neck. The music stopped. Silence. Then, the cursed patch shimmered gold. The crack sealed. The soil let out a long, contented sigh like it had eaten a good meal. Clucksworth clapped with his wings. You didn't die. That's better than expected. Ren collapsed into the grass, arms spread. I hate this place. The soil was quiet now. Soft. Not humming, not pulsing, just ready. Ren knelt beside the freshly blessed patch. For the first time all day, the land didn't feel like it was trying to curse his bloodline. He reached into his satchel and pulled out the glowing seed, the one that had come with the note. It was warm. Lighter than it looked, and faintly translucent, like a pearl carved from morning light. Clucksworth hovered nearby. You sure you want to use that one first? What else am I supposed to plant? A rock. The chicken shrugged. Just saying. That seed's special. Might be overkill for a first-timer. Ren hesitated, staring at it. The note had said, grow something real. He pressed the seed gently into the dirt. The soil welcomed it like an old friend. No screams. No curses. Just silence. Then a pulse. A faint green shimmer rippled through the patch, and for a moment, the air smelled like rain on mint. The seed vanished beneath the soil, leaving behind a small mound, perfectly smooth. Ren sat back on his heels. Okay, I did the thing. Now what? As if in response, a faint clink landed beside him. A water pail. He looked up. The elf girl stood a few meters away, arms folded. Don't let it dry out, she said. It's temperamental. Thanks. She turned to leave but paused. That dance was the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen. Glad I could contribute to your evening. She didn't smile. But she also didn't steal anything on her way out. Progress. Ren's stomach growled loudly. It had been at least a full day since he'd eaten, and surviving a cursed scream dirt dance ritual had apparently burned more calories than expected. Inside the shack, he rummaged through the satchel again. No food. Just dirt, lint, and wait. A pouch filled with dried herbs that pulsed gently with green-blue light. Clucksworth peeked over the edge of the windowsill. Ah, the starter kit. Magical herbs. Be careful. Some of those react poorly to heat, or oxygen, or thoughts. Ren grabbed a battered pan from the corner, wiped off what he hoped was just ash, and lit the stove. Surprisingly, the old lantern stove still sparked to life, glowing with a pale blue flame. He tossed in some chopped herbs and sprinkled in a bit of salt he found in a small vial labeled, maybe edible. The mixture hissed, then bubbled, then giggled. Oh no, Ren whispered. With a pop and a flash, the contents burst upward in a plume of sparkling green smoke. The pan flipped, hit the ceiling, and landed perfectly on the plate he didn't remember setting out. It smelled amazing and vaguely dangerous. He took a cautious bite. Warm, savory, slightly minty, and his eyes widened. His limbs buzzed. His hair stood on end. For 1 second, he understood gravity. Clucksworth whistled. You accidentally made focus steal. Temporary stat boost. And probably insomnia. Ren blinked, twitching slightly. I think I can see the air. The chicken backed away. Good. Channel that energy into tilling. Or building. Or screaming into a pillow. That night, the stew's effects wore off just as abruptly as they came on. Ren lay on the cot, eyes wide, staring at the ceiling. The walls creaked with every breeze. The air was still, save for the occasional chirp from something not quite a cricket. Then silence. Too much silence. A coldness swept through the shack, unnatural, like someone had opened a door to winter. He sat up. Outside, the newly blessed patch glowed faintly. Not green this time, but a sickly white, like bone soaked in moonlight. Ren stepped outside, barefoot, clutching the rusty home more out of instinct than strategy. A figure stood in the field, translucent, bent, draped in a tattered farmer's cloak, its face hidden beneath a wide straw hat that shimmered like mist. It turned slightly toward him. You planted it, the ghost rasped. Its voice sounded like leaves dying in the wind. You woke the land. Ren took a step back. Who are you? I was the last keeper. Before the rot. Before the hunger. The ghost knelt beside the mound where the seed had been planted. Grow true or grow cursed. The soil pulsed once, faint, red. Ren tightened his grip on the hoe. What does that mean? But the ghost was already fading, dissolving into drifting ash. Clucksworth appeared beside him, unusually quiet. That wasn't in the tutorial. Ren stared at the cursed patch. He didn't sleep that night. Dawn bled over the horizon in soft gold and peach, casting long shadows across the field. Ren sat on the front step of the shack, eyes heavy, clothes rumpled, hair stuck in a swirl from where he'd dozed off against the wall. He hadn't meant to stay up, but the ghost's warning kept echoing. Grow true or grow cursed. Clucksworth was asleep on top of a sack of hay, one wing curled over his head like a blanket. Even the air felt gentler, less humming tension, more quiet breath. Ren rubbed his face. Okay, he muttered. I'm alive. Mostly. The dirt didn't eat me. That's something. He stood and stretched, bones popping like fireworks. Then he saw it. A single sprout. Tiny. Vibrant green. Delicate stem poking from the middle of the blessed patch. It leaned slightly toward the morning light, swaying as if to music only it could hear. Ren stared. It was perfect. No screaming. No glowing veins. Just a sprout. Alive. Real. A smile pulled at the edge of his mouth, small, tired, but honest. He knelt beside it, brushing dirt gently away from the base. First one's free, he whispered. From the woods beyond the field, a shape stirred, tall, hooded, watching. It didn't move. Didn't speak. Then it turned and vanished into the trees. Ren never saw it. He just exhaled, quietly. Day 1. The sprout shimmered in the light. Ren tightened the grip on his hoe and eyed the next patch of land that looked normal enough. Just a tangle of weeds, moss, and twisted grass that reached his knees. But after the cursed dirt incident, he wasn't taking anything at face value. He swung once, clearing a thick clump. It hissed. Did that weed just hiss at me? Cluxworth, perched on a nearby fence post, squinted. Might be a snap vine. Or a biter bud. Could also be regular grass with attitude. Comforting. Ren struck again. This time, the weed moved. It recoiled, coiled around his hoe, and lunged. He yelped, stumbled back, and swung wildly. The vine snapped off with a wet pop and landed on the ground, flailing like a decapitated worm. Oh, good, he muttered. Violent produce. More weeds started shifting, rising slightly as if sniffing for weakness. A low rustle rippled through the patch like wind through fur. Retreat. Cluxworth offered. Ren sprinted. They dove behind a barrel near the shack. The weeds stilled. For now. I thought this place was supposed to be fertile, Ren panted. It is. Fertile with rage, Cluxworth replied. The land remembers everything. And it hates intruders. Ren peeked over the barrel. The vines were already creeping back into place, patient and slow. He exhaled. So, magic machete, flame spell, or emotional support shovel? Cluxworth shrugged. You're the farmer. Improvise. Ren sat on an overturned bucket, glaring at the weed patch like it had insulted his mother. The vines hadn't attacked again, but they moved. Slowly, subtly, like they knew he was watching. Still alive, a voice called out. He looked up. The elf girl was back, standing at the edge of the clearing with a bundle of herbs slung over one shoulder and her usual expression of unimpressed amusement. She raised an eyebrow. You lost a fight to weeds? They bit me. She walked closer, inspecting the field. Ah, snavines. Territorial little things. You tried digging here. I didn't know I needed a combat strategy for gardening. She pulled a small curved blade from her belt, leaf-shaped, glowing faintly, and stepped into the patch. The vines hissed, tense then stilled as she moved through them. Ren watched, stunned. How are you not getting attacked? She sliced through the center vine with one smooth stroke. They recognized magic. Or confidence. Maybe both. She cut down 5 more before stepping out and tossing him the blade. It was lighter than he expected. Use that next time, she said. Or at least stop flailing like a broken windmill. Do you enjoy being this smug? Yes. She turned to leave again, brushing dirt from her cloak. Try not to die. You still owe me crops. Ren stared at the blade in his hand. I didn't even agree to that deal, he muttered. Too late. She called over her shoulder. Cluxworth chuckled. She's growing on me. The compost bin sat behind the shack like an innocent afterthought. Ren had passed it 3 times that morning without a second glance, just a rickety wooden box covered in moss, sagging under its own stink. But when he walked past it again, it moved. Not a subtle creak, a jolt, followed by a low, wet growl. Ren froze. Did the compost just threaten me? Cluxworth waddled up beside him, peering at the bin with one eye half closed. Huh, that one's still here. Thought it starved last year. It? You mean there's a thing in there? Technically a colony. Failed experiment. Don't open it. Naturally, Ren stepped closer. The lid shifted, just slightly. Then a bubbling, sloshing sound emerged from within, like something breathing through swamp water. He reached forward anyway. Curiosity outweighed survival instinct. Clicked. He unlatched the lid. Something lunged. Ren slammed it shut with a yell, shoving his weight against the wood as tendrils of dark, rotting vegetation pressed from underneath. They slapped and smeared against the inner walls before slinking back down with a frustrated groan. He quickly grabbed some nails and a hammer from the shed and boarded it shut. 3 nails. One shaky breath. I'm never composting again. Cluxworth fluttered up to the roof. That's why I poop outside. Ren wiped his forehead. Great. Now I'm farming on haunted soil with aggressive salad and a carnivorous garbage box. Getting the full greenroot experience, I see. Ren sat cross-legged on a tree stump, chewing on something that might have been a carrot. Might have also been a root with ambition. He hadn't decided yet. Cluxworth paced in front of him like a tiny, feathered professor. Soil, the chicken declared, is alive. Ren raised an eyebrow. You mean like worms and microbes? No. I mean alive. Personality. Mood swings. Spiritual baggage. Of course it does. Cluxworth flapped onto a rock. Every plot of land has a spirit, sometimes more than one. When the old keepers vanished, most of those spirits went dormant. Some went sour. Rand glanced toward the compost bin. Yeah, noticed. Blessings aren't just magical glitter. They're contracts. When you bless the soil, you're inviting the spirit back in and promising to treat it right. Ren frowned. What happens if I break that promise? Clucksworth was silent for a moment. Let's just say, ever seen a cabbage screen? No. Exactly. Ren leaned back, trying to absorb it. So what now? I bless every patch before planting. Yup. And hope the spirits aren't holding a grudge. He sighed. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Immensely. Ren stood up, brushing off his hands. Fine. Where do I start? Clucksworth tilted his head. Second plot. You'll need to dance again. Ren froze. There's no alternate option? Like chanting? Blood ritual? Interpretive bowing? Nope. Ren groaned into his hands. I swear this land has a sense of humor. It does. And right now, it thinks you're hilarious. Ren stood in the center of the new patch of soil, holding a second glowing mushroom and muttering under his breath, I cannot believe this is my life. Clucksworth sat nearby with a bucket of popcorn. You're the one who reincarnated into a magical agroeconomy. I'm just here for the show. The second plot was smaller than the first, but darker. The dirt had a slick, clay-like sheen, and when Ren tried to dig earlier, it actually spat at him. So here he was again, under the moonlight, about to dance. He closed his eyes, took a breath, and raised the mushroom. The air shifted. Soft music returned, ghostly pipes and a beat like footsteps in mud. The soil pulsed beneath him. Ren moved, slower this time. Less flailing, more rhythm. He focused on the beat, the movement, the energy in the ground. Arms swayed. Feet shuffled. It was less ritual and more strange, earthy flow. A few steps in, something clicked. The ground welcomed it. A soft hum rose from the soil. The sheen faded. The texture changed. It no longer looked like swamp tar. It looked rich. Ren spun one last time and collapsed to a knee, breathing hard but upright. Silence. Then a faint chime. The soil sparkled. Clucksworth gave a slow, respectful nod. Not bad. You looked like a guy doing Tai Chi with a glowing mushroom, but not bad. Ren chuckled, still panting. You think the land liked it? The soil released a small puff of green dust. I'll take that as a yes. The next morning, Ren was ankle-deep in mud, trying to coax water from a stubbornly clogged irrigation rune, when he heard a voice. You're bleeding on the rosemary. He looked up. A girl stood at the edge of the patch, barefoot, arms crossed. Dirt stained her skin up to the elbows, and tangled vines wrapped around both arms like living bracelets. Her hair was wild, leafy green at the tips, and her eyes were the color of bark after rain. Ren blinked. I don't remember hiring help. She stepped forward. The vines around her wrist rustled. I felt your blessing last night, she said. It woke up the field. It pulled me here. Ren slowly set the hoe down. And you are? Thorn. That's a name. It's a warning. Clucksworth landed beside him. Ah, Forestborn. Ren whispered. That's supposed to mean something? Half spirit, half human, all attitude. Thorn ignored them both and crouched by the edge of the newly blessed plot. Her fingers sank into the soil like roots returning home. She exhaled deeply, and the vines around her arms tightened like they were sighing. This land is sick, she muttered. You've stirred the rot beneath it. It'll fight back. Round crossed his arms. Then help me stop it. Thorn looked up slowly, her eyes unreadable. Maybe. She stood and walked toward the tree lane. If the sprout survives tonight, I'll stay. And just like that, she vanished into the brush, silent as a falling leaf. Ren scratched his head. This place keeps handing out cryptic women like quest rewards. Clucksworth nodded. Lucky you. The sprout looked wrong. It had grown taller overnight, but not in the way it should have. The stem was thin, twitching slightly, and the edges of the leaves had started to curl inward like they were ashamed of themselves. A faint black veining pulsed just under the surface. Ren knelt beside it, frowning. That's not normal, right? Clucksworth peered over the edge of a watering can. Only if you're growing despair, which I don't recommend. Ren touched the soil. It was colder than before. Damp, but not the good kind, sticky, like spoiled milk had seeped in from underground. I blessed this plot, he muttered. I did the stupid dance. It shimmered. It liked it. Yeah, well, something else doesn't. A soft rustle came from beneath the soil. Not the wind. Not a bug. A movement. Clucksworth flapped up onto the fence post. We've got rot. Root level. What do I do? The chicken hesitated. We might be dealing with deep corruption. Something's poisoning the land from underneath. Old magic. broken promises. Or maybe your compost bin burped in the wrong direction. Ren stood up, wiping his hands on his tunic. Great. So what? Wait until it dies. Clucksworth nodded solemnly. Or go digging where you probably shouldn't. Ren looked at the hoe, then at the trembling sprout. Yeah, he said. Let's make another mistake. Ren plunged the hoe into the cursed patch like he was picking a fight with the earth itself. The ground groaned. Not screamed, groaned low and heavy, like something waking up with a grudge. He dug anyway, layer after layer, until the soil shifted from brown to gray to stone. No, not stone. It was smooth, crystalline, buried just below the roots. He knelt and brushed it clean. A teardrop-shaped crystal sat embedded in the earth, pulsing with faint green light. As his fingers grazed it, the glow brightened and suddenly flashed. He wasn't in the field anymore. He stood in the same clearing, but older, overgrown, and glowing with golden crops stretching in every direction. A figure in robes, another keeper, stood in the center, arms raised. This land remembers, the figure's voice echoed. It thrives on truth and withers on lies. We buried the rot, but rot grows. Another flash, now the field burned. Black vines lashed across the crops. The robed keeper was on the ground, clutching the same crystal. If you found this, it's waking up again. And it won't stay buried. Not this time. Crack. The vision ended. Ren gasped and fell back as the crystal dimmed and crumbled into ash. The ground pulsed. Once, Clucksworth rushed to his side. You okay? You were glowing for a second. Ren stared at the dirt, wide-eyed. We didn't stir something up. He stood slowly. It's already awake. It started with a snap. Ren turned just in time to see one of the sprout's roots rip through the soil like a whip, slashing across the ground with unnatural speed. A moment later, more roots burst upward, thick, thorned, and twitching, pulling themselves into twisted shapes like skeletal limbs made of bark. Clucksworth squawked. Okay. Definitely not normal crop behavior. Ren backed up, gripping the hoe. The cursed plot trembled, and from it rose a root creature, half plant, half nightmare. Glowing red cracks ran through its bark skin. It hissed with a mouth made of tangled vines and thorns. The sprout behind it wilted further. It's trying to consume the blessing, Clucksworth growled. Turn it into something else. Ren didn't wait. He charged. The hoe struck bark with a crack and sparked on impact. The creature reeled, but not far. It lashed back, cutting his arm with a thorn tendril. He winced but swung again, this time slamming the glowing part of the hoe, still faintly charged from the blessing ritual, into the base of the root thing. The light flared. The creature shrieked and burst into dust and splinters. Ren staggered back, breathing hard. Two more rows behind it. Clucksworth. The chicken hurled a glowing mushroom at his feet. Emergency stew bomb. Eat it. Ren shoved it into his mouth just as a vine lashed toward him. Speed. Strength. Clarity. He moved. The garden was no longer a field. It was a battlefield. The last root creature crumbled under Ren's final swing, scattering into blackened twigs and smoke. The soil around the plot went still, not peaceful, just quiet. Like a beast retreating back into the deep. Ren dropped to one knee, panting, his arms trembling from the effort. His tunic was torn, dirt-smeared, and streaked with a shallow cut from the earlier lash. Clucksworth waddled up. Well, that was dramatic. Ren ignored him, crawling to the edge of the blessed patch. The sprout was gone. Burned. Blackened. He closed his eyes, jaw tightening. Then the soil stirred. A single pulse ran through it, a soft thump, and in the very center, a new sprout pushed through. Taller. Thicker. Its leaves shimmered not just green, but tinged with gold and faint veins of silver-blue light. It radiated calm. It was the same plant, but different. Reborn. Behind him, soft footsteps rustled in the grass. Thorn emerged from the tree line. Her expression was unreadable. You fought for it, she said simply. Ren didn't answer. She approached the sprout and laid a hand on the soil. Her vines unfurled slightly around her wrist and curled toward the plant, but didn't touch. Respect. It likes you. Ren sat back, exhausted. Tell it to take a number. Thorn glanced at him. You're not done. No, I'm really not. She looked back at the glowing sprout. Then I'll stay. Ren nodded once. Eye in the distance, the wind shifted. And beneath the field something watched. Ren was ankle-deep in a puddle, chasing a bucket the wind had stolen, when a voice behind him announced, far too cheerfully, you're invited. He turned. A short woman with a sunflower pin in her hat stood holding a scroll the length of her arm. Her smile was the kind Ren had only seen on cult recruiters and salespeople who knew they'd already closed the deal. To what? He asked warily. The Green Root Festival of Fertility, Blessings, and biannual vegetable pageantry. she's saying. That's a real name? Tradition, she beamed. Cluxworth peeked out from the coop. Oh no, it's that time. The woman unrolled the scroll, which clunked as it hit the mud. All keepers must attend. You're legally required to provide one enchanted crop for judging and participate in at least one event. What kind of event? She didn't answer. She just handed him a sign-up sheet titled Cabbage Dodgeball, Petal Duels, and Soul's Oil Showdowns. Ren stared. Is this a party or a test? Both, she chirped. Also, bring your chicken. He owes the mayor 15 feathers. Cluxworth groaned. Long story. Don't ask. As she walked away, scroll in hand, Ren looked at his reborn sprout glowing peacefully behind him. Festival. He looked at the sky. I've survived curses, weeds, and a root monster, he muttered. Now I have to survive socializing. The festival preparation packet turned out to be 70 pages of handwritten nonsense tied together with twine and desperation. Ren flipped through it with increasing dread. Page 3. Smile until your teeth hurt. The soil likes confidence. Page 12. Avoid planting directly next to grumpy spirits. They will interfere with judging. Page 29. If your crop explodes mid-festival, you forfeit the ribbon and your lunch token. He groaned and flopped back on a sack of fertilizer. This isn't a festival. It's agricultural hazing. Cluxworth, pecking at a cracked corn muffin, nodded. And this year's theme is harmony through competition, which, in green root, usually leads to injuries. Thorn emerged from the tree line, her arms draped in fresh-cut vines. The village sent a cart, she said, filled with supplies. And glitter. I'm burning the glitter. Ren sat up. Wait, what kind of supplies? A moment later, a wheelbarrow rolled into view, filled with things like color-coded soil runes sash that read Sprout Daddy in gold thread and a crate of emotionally resonant fertilizer bags shaped like hearts. Thorn tossed him a festival badge. Congratulations. You're now a contestant, representative, and potential romantic interest. Ren stared at it. What? Page 47, she replied flatly. You're required to accept at least one flirtatious compliment during the festival to maintain magical morale. Cluxworth clucked. I love this place. Ren buried his face in his hands. I don't. Ren was lining up small enchanted watering stones when he heard a voice that instantly raised his blood pressure. Well, if it isn't the backup keeper. He turned slowly. A tall figure leaned against the fence, arms crossed, smile far too polished. His clothes were spotless, his cloak was embroidered with corn patterns, and his name tag, Gods help him, read, Florian, triple-time Sprout champion. Cluxworth hissed under his breath. Florian Ferncroft, the peacock of the plow. Pleasure, Florian said, with zero sincerity. Heard someone finally activated the lower plot. Cute little sprout you've got there. Ren straightened. It survived a rude beast. What's yours done? Waltzed into second bloom by dawn, Florian said casually. Sings when watered. Cooks its own garnish. No big deal. Thorn walked up, unimpressed. Does it talk too? Yes, Florian said proudly. In 3 dialects. Ren blinked. It talks. Well, it mostly screams in Old Vaganic, but still. Florian's eyes locked onto Ren's sprout, which shimmered faintly in the sun. His smile tightened. Interesting. I do love an underdog arc, he said. Break a leg at judging. Preferably both. He tipped his embroidered hat and strolled off. Ren turned to Cluxworth. Tell me I can beat him. Objectively? Probably not. Thanks. But dramatically? Oh, absolutely. Just water your plant like your reputation depends on it. Because it does. Ren looked at his glowing sprout. It hummed. All right, he muttered. Let's give this vegetable a reason to scream back. Ren stood in front of his plot, sleeves rolled, jaw set like a man preparing for war. Thorn tilted her head. You look like you're about to challenge the soil to single combat. I am, he said, and I'm going to win. Cluxworth flapped up beside them, dropping a scroll labeled Unconventional Crop Enhancement Techniques, Volume 2. All right, he said. We've got 5 days until judging. So we're doing this montage style. What does that mean? Ren asked. Cue. Training montage. Scene 1. Ren sprinting down the hill with 2 watering cans, yelling, Why are they this heavy? Scene 2. Thorn guiding magical energy into the soil while Ren tries, and fails, to mimic her calm breathing. His hair catches fire briefly. Scene 3. Cluxworth pelting Ren with spoiled potatoes while yelling, Dodge like you're worthy of rain. Scene 4. The sprout now glows faintly with rhythmic pulses, responding to music Ren plays on a rusty flute. It hums in harmony. Florian watches from a distance, jaw tight to BY sunset of the fourth day. Ren collapsed onto a hay bale, sweaty, dirt-covered, and grinning. Thorn handed him a leaf-wrapped drink. You're improving. Really, your plant no longer looks like it wants to die out of embarrassment. Clucksworth cackled. High praise. Ren looked at his sprout. It stood tall now, leaves outstretched, gold-veined, humming softly in time with the wind. All right, he whispered. Let's show them what growth really looks like. Green root was glowing. Literally. The village had strung enchanted lanterns across every tree, fence post, and mildly stationary goat. Ribbons of magical light drifted lazily through the air, changing color based on the crowd's mood. Unfortunately, the crowd was already tipsy. Ren stood at the festival gates, wearing a clean shirt, rare, holding a wooden tray of sample snacks required, and trying not to look overwhelmed, failing. Thorn stood beside him, arms crossed, wearing the same cloak. Just brushed. You clean up exactly the same, he muttered. She glanced at him. You were white. You're planting next to soul soil. It was the only shirt that didn't smell like compost. Clucksworth strutted up wearing a custom-fitted vest with gold trim. Ladies, he said, to no one in particular. The cock of the coop has arrived. Ren stared. Where did you get that? Mayor's office. Long story. I owe him 0 feathers now. Booths lined the square, crop-tasting contests, enchanted vegetable sculpting, and a suspiciously intense tent labeled flirtation magic for fertility boosts. A loud boom shook the sky. Purple firework blossoms exploded above the field, shaped like turnips. Opening ceremonies in 20 minutes, Thorn said. Ren nodded, eyes on the glowing sprout behind the stage. You think it's ready? It's humming, she replied. It's either ready or planning something. Ren adjusted his tray, wiped his palms. Let's hope it's the first one. The crowd gathered in the center of Green Root, a swirl of villagers, visiting spirit farmers, enchanted livestock, and at least one sentient cabbage wearing a tiara at a wooden stage creaked under the weight of banners, glowing root ropes, and the unbearable pressure of tradition. Ren stood at the edge, his name called out by a man in a beet-colored suit yelling into a magical megaphone. Next up, the keeper of the lower field. Polite clapping. One off-key cheer. Thorn coughed loudly, which might have been support. Might have been sarcasm. Ren walked up with his tray, a small flowering sample from the reborn sprout, resting in a magical soil dish that pulsed gently with light. He placed it on the pedestal beside Florian's entry. A floating tomato orb with orbiting seasoning rings and a literal miniature sun shining above it. Florian smiled. Adorable. I remember my first plant too. Ren ignored him. Clucksworth gave him a thumbs up from the front row. The judges, a fairy in a sun hat, an old woman made entirely of moss, and a tired wizard with a clipboard leaned in to inspect the glowing sprout. The fairy blinked. It's humming. The moss woman sniffed. It's afraid. The wizard squinted. It's watching us back. Florian's smile slipped. Suddenly, the ground under Ren's plant glowed. Not red, not gold, but a deep emerald pulse that trembled the air. Everyone froze. Then it stopped. Silence. The sprout stood taller. Ren smiled. Guess it likes crowds. The ceremony ended with a thunderous applause, several confused goats, and 3 plants fainting from performance anxiety. Ren stepped off stage, heart pounding, trying not to look as shocked as he felt. His sprout was still upright, still humming, still not exploding. A win by Green Root standards. He didn't get far before Florian fell into step beside him, too close and smiling too wide. You've got talent, Florian said. Or maybe just luck. Hard to tell at this distance. Pretty sure I heard your tomato sneeze mid-judging, Ren replied. Florian's smile didn't falter. Minor hiccup. It's allergic to moss people. They walked past a snack booth where someone was selling solstice shooters and enchanted turnip chips. Florian plucked one without paying. You know, we don't have to be rivals, he said, crunching loudly. There's always room for a decent farmer in my territory. I could put in a good word. Get you better land. Cleaner water. A compost bin that doesn't growl. Ren raised an eyebrow. And in return? Florian shrugged. Withdraw. Let the judging favor the safe choice. You win friends. I win ribbons. We all go home happy. Ren stopped walking. I didn't dance with a glowing mushroom, survive a root demon, and talk a sprout back to life just to sell out for clean compost. Florian's smile cooled. Well then, He flicked a chip onto the ground and walked away. Clucksworth waddled up behind Ren. So, did we just declare war at a vegetable festival? Ren nodded. Feels like it. That night, the festival quieted, the crowds thinned. The enchanted lights dimmed to a soft glow. Laughter gave way to murmurs, then to stillness. Ren sat by his sprout, the only thing still awake in the field. It gently pulsed with light, not in rhythm with anything around it, like it was keeping its own time. He reached out and rested a hand near its roots, and heard, whispering. Not voices, memories, faint echoes curled at the edge of his thoughts. Chants in ancient tones, crying soil, roots screaming as they were burned away. The field was remembering. Thorn appeared silently at his side. You feel it too? Ren didn't look up. It's getting stronger. The deeper the sprout grows, the more it touches whatever's buried down there. It's not just corruption, she said. It's history, forgotten on purpose. He finally looked at her. Why? She shook her head. Some things are easier to let rot. Clucksworth landed beside them. Too late now. Tomorrow is final judging. That sprout is going to bloom. And when it does, Ren finished the thought, it'll show everything. The sprout trembled once, and a single leaf turned silver at the edge. A warning, or a promise. Ren stood, brushing off his hands. Then let's make sure we're the ones standing when it does. The judges returned at dawn. This time, no fanfare. No music. Just the slow crunch of boots over dude grass and the hush of a crowd that somehow already knew this would be different. Ren stood beside his sprout, heart steady but stomach flipping. Thorn waited just behind him, vines curled loosely around her wrists. Clucksworth paced like a coach watching his most chaotic players step up for the final match. Florian stood at the far end, arms crossed, his tomato orb still orbiting smugly in its gravity field. The moss woman judge stepped forward. Begin the final bloom. Ren knelt and touched the soil. The sprout responded instantly. It grew, not explosively, gracefully. The stalk rose upward like it had waited centuries for this moment. Leaves spread wide, catching light not yet cast. A bud formed at the top, pulsing gold-silver then deep green. And then it opened, not into a flower, into a memory. The air shifted. Images flickered around the crowd, past keepers, ancient harvests, the moment the land was blessed, and the day it was broken. They saw war. Fire. A betrayal that sealed the fields in silence for decades. Gasps rippled across the festival. Florian's tomato dropped from orbit and thudded into the dirt with a wet splat. The crystal flower pulsed once more and dimmed, returning to a quiet shimmer. Silence. Then the fairy judge whispered. It told the truth. The moss woman stepped forward, hands trembling. I think we have our winner. They handed Ren the ribbon in silence. No trumpets. No drumroll. Just the old moss woman pinning it gently to his chest and whispering, the land remembers. And now, so do we. The crowd slowly erupted into cheers, but Ren barely heard them. The sprout turned memory bloom stood quietly in the plot behind him, now sealed with a thin ring of golden vines and shimmering glyphs. Sacred. Untouchable. Still humming. Florian stood off to the side, arms stiff, smile cracking like thin ice. You got lucky, he muttered as he passed. Ren didn't reply. Clucksworth strutted into view with a crown made of braided straw and carrot tops. I stole this from the judging table. You're welcome. Ren raised an eyebrow. That's not how crowning works. It is now. Thorn approached, nodding once. You did it. We did it. Ren corrected. She smirked. Just a little. Don't get soft. The land's awake now, and others will feel it. As if on cue, a distant rumble shook the hills. Low. Deep. Not thunder. Ren turned toward the horizon. Something ancient was stirring, slow and patient, as if the sprout had cracked open more than just history. He looked down at the ribbon. Simple. Cloth and thread. But somehow heavier than it should be. I think the festival was the easy part, he said. Clucksworth nodded. Correct. Now comes the weird part. And with the crowd still cheering behind them, Ren stepped forward into the next season. It started with missing carrots, not pulled. Not eaten. Just gone. Uprooted with surgical precision and no footprints left behind. Ren stood at the edge of the neighbor's plot, arms crossed, staring at a row of freshly disturbed dirt. This is the third field, he muttered. Thorn knelt beside the furrows, brushing the soil with 2 fingers. Her vines tensed. Whatever did this didn't crawl. It grew. Clucksworth flapped in. A straw hat askew. You're saying we've got moving crops? Worse, Thorn said. Something using the crops. Ren looked around. The fields were too quiet. No wind. No bugs. No birds. Just watching. He tightened his grip on the hoe. Is this connected to my sprout? Thorn stood slowly. The land's awake now. Not everything that grows has good intentions. That afternoon, the mayor's assistant arrived in a panic. The cabbage in plot 4, she gasped, breathless. It bit someone. Ren blinked. It bit someone? Bit them twice. Then rolled into a ditch. Ren stared at the tree lean. Cluxworth sighed. Welcome to the next phase of farming, defense. The sprout back at his plot glowed faintly, petals closed. But Ren swore it was pulsing. Listening. Ren didn't sleep. Not well, anyway. He'd wake every hour, convinced something was shifting outside at sunrise. He stepped barefoot into the field, still groggy, expecting the usual soft hum from the sprout. Instead, he found it facing the wrong direction. It had turned. Not dramatically, just enough. The bloom, which always opened toward the sunrise, now tilted north, toward the forest, toward something unseen. He knelt slowly. Plants don't turn overnight, he said quietly. Cluxworth appeared beside him, balancing a mug of mushroom coffee. Plants don't hum either. You're in new territory. Ren stared at it. Did you move? The sprout didn't answer, obviously, but it pulsed once. A soft, slow thrum that rippled through the soil and sent tiny bits of dust fluttering from its base. Thorn arrived a minute later, holding a basket of strange herbs and her usual lack of optimism. It shifted, Ren told her. She nodded. The pull's growing stronger. What pull? Thorn walked to the edge of the field and placed one hand against the dirt. The bloom isn't just reacting to the land anymore. It's reaching beyond it, calling to things. Ren stood up. Like what? She looked at him. Whatever answers. Screaming wasn't unusual in Greenroot. It was usually cheerful festival cheering, romantic misfires, Cluxworth being chased for unpaid bakery taps. But this scream was different. It echoed from the village square. Loud. Wet. Ren ran. He arrived just in time to see a full-grown enchanted cabbage hurtling through the air like a spinning boulder, its leafy edges serrated and dripping with purple juice. It slammed into a fruit stand, splintering crates and scattering terrified peaches. A vendor cried out, "It took my wristband and insulted my radishes." Villagers scrambled for cover. One unlucky bystander tried to reason with the cabbage. It bit his boot and rolled away, shrieking in what could only be described as smug triumph. Ren blinked. This wasn't in the festival packet. Cluxworth dove into a barrel. We've crossed into full-grown monster produce. Thorn arrived, vines coiled tight. This isn't random. The land's reacting. Something woke up when your bloom opened. Now crops all over are sinking to the shift. As the cabbage rebounded off a cart and flopped menacingly toward Ren, he stepped forward, raised his hoe like a bat, and batted it mid-dash roll. It exploded into a flurry of glowing shreds. Silence fell. Then applause. One villager whispered, "He's the vegetable slayer." Ren lowered the hoe. Okay. I want that title not to stick. Thorn's gaze drifted back toward the fields. This was just a test. Ren sighed. Of course it was. They buried what was left of the cabbage behind the shed. Ren stared at the tiny grave marker someone had made from a snapped spoon. It read, it bit, it rolled, it died. Cluxworth saluted. O worthy adversary. May your dressing be zesty. Thorn, however, didn't laugh. She stood near the sprout, her hands sunk wrist-deep in the soil, eyes narrowed. It's spreading, she said. Ren turned. The bloom's influence? No. The imbalance. Something inside the land is unraveling. Slowly, but deliberately. Ren looked at his sprout. It no longer pulsed softly. It throbbed, like a heartbeat. Low and deep. Why now? He asked. Thorn stood, wiping her hands on her cloak. Monster crops don't just happen. They only grow when a powerful magic has disrupted the natural order. And mine's doing that? She hesitated. Yours is fixing something, she said carefully. But fixing old magic can be just as dangerous as breaking it. Round crossed his arms. You're saying healing the land might wake what poisoned it? She nodded once. Exactly. A wind swept through the field, dry and cold despite the season. In the distance, several scarecrows toppled at once. Cluxworth glanced toward the horizon. That's not ominous at all. Ren looked at the sprout again. So what now? Thorn's vines twitched. Now we dig deeper. The digging started at dawn. Ren, Thorn, and Cluxworth stood in a ring of lanterns, centered on the humming patch of earth around the sprout. It wasn't a normal glow anymore. It was directional. Like a compass buried in the roots. Thorn placed one hand on the soil and whispered something in Old Vaganic. The vines around her wrist shimmered, and the ground cracked open, not violently, but with purpose. Beneath the surface was no rock, no stone, no simple earth.it was structure. Glowing lines stretched out in every direction, root-thin but sharp, like veins of light embedded in the dirt. They pulsed in steady rhythm, connecting fields, woods, and something deep below the village. A leyline network, Thorn whispered. Cursed, hidden, and still alive. Clucksworth waddled closer and squinted. Looks like someone tried to overwrite the land's natural magic. Like carving a second heart into a body. Ren followed one line with his finger. It led directly to the sprout, which now vibrated slightly, not out of control, but like it was responding to what they'd found. He looked up. This is under everyone's crops? Worse, Thorn said. It's under everything. Ren's hand tightened on the edge of the hole. Can we remove it? No, she said softly. It's not a parasite. It's a foundation. Ren stared into the glowing map. So we've been farming over something that shouldn't exist. Clucksworth clucked low. And it's starting to remember it does. It began subtly. Ren noticed it first with the sunflowers. They tilted, not toward the sun, but toward his sprout. Then came the wild herbs creeping out of the forest edge, slowly forming tangled lines like they were drawn by invisible gravity. One by one, plants began to lean, shift, or even uproot entirely, moving in slow arcs toward his field. Clucksworth squawked from the roof. We've got unauthorized horticultural activity inbound. By midday, Ren's plot looked like the center of a growing spiral. Wild roots curled along the fence. A berry bush hopped from a neighbor's yard and planted itself right next to the sprout. Thorn crouched beside the growing mass, eyes narrowed. They're responding to the bloom's call. But why? Ren asked. It's not even blooming again yet. It doesn't have to, she said. It's a nexus now. Everything growing nearby can feel it. They're not being summoned, they're volunteering. Ren watched as even weeds from his compost bin started curling toward the sprout like worshippers to a shrine. Should I be worried? He asked. Clucksworth flapped down beside him. Let me put it this way. If your sprout starts assigning jobs and building a parliament, we've crossed a line. Just then, a cluster of glowing mushrooms popped up in a perfect circle around the sprout's base. Ren exhaled slowly. Okay, we've crossed it. The first scream came from the pumpkins. Ren bolted upright in bed, the sound sharp and wet, followed by a deep crunch. He grabbed the hoe before he even finished putting on his boots. Outside, the moon was full and heavy, casting an eerie glow across the field. The sprout stood tall, calm, but flaring with pale green light. Everything else around it wasn't. A vibeast had torn through the northeast fence. Long, gnarled roots twisted into limbs, its core pulsing like a rotting fruit with teeth. It moved like it remembered being planted and hated every second of it. Clucksworth crash-landed on Ren's shoulder. Yup, that's corruption born. Probably from the leyline split. Ren didn't wait. He charged. The hoe slammed into a whipping root, slicing it clean. But the beast didn't flinch. It reared back and lashed with 3 more vines. One caught Ren's side, spinning him into the dirt. Distracted, Thorn shouted, sprinting in from the tree line. Her vines coiled around the creature's legs, slowing its movement. Ren spat dirt and rolled, raising the hoe just in time to block a strike. How do we kill this thing? Bless strike. Go for the heart. Ren glanced at the sprout.it pulsed once, sending a faint wave of light through the field. The creature recoiled. Ren didn't hesitate. He leapt, drove the hoe deep into its core crack. The beast split, crumbled, and bled green smoke into the soil. Silence, Clucksworth wheezed. And they said vegetable farming was peaceful. Morning came with silence. No birdsong. No breeze. Just the soft creak of broken fence posts and the faint shimmer of dew on disturbed soil. Ren stood over the remains of the vibeast. What was left of it had dissolved into ash and slime, except for one thing. A seed. Black. Perfectly round. And still pulsing. Thorn knelt beside it, eyes narrowed. That's not from this world. Ren didn't touch it. How did it survive? It didn't belong to the beast, she said. It was the beast. Or maybe, what it carried. Clucksworth waddled closer, feathers puffed. Seeds don't beat. That one's alive. And it's not friendly. Ren knelt, staring at the pulse. It throbbed once every few seconds, like a second heartbeat in the dirt. It's not dying. No, Thorn said. It's waiting. Ren looked at the sprout. It stood perfectly still, watching if such a thing was possible. Its bloom was partially closed now, shielding its inner light. Should we destroy it? He asked. Thorn hesitated. We could try. But if the land grew this in reaction to healing, then we might need to understand what it's warning us about first. Ren picked up the seed carefully, holding it in a wrapped cloth. It was warm and faintly hungry. Clucksworth groaned. Great. Demon seeds. Classic fourth arc problem. Ren slipped the seed into a box, sealed it, and placed it deep in the shed. Let's hope it stays asleep. The letter arrived at noon.no courier. No messenger. Just a sealed envelope pinned to the front door of the shack with a glowing vine dart. Ren pulled it free and read the first line aloud. By order of the Green Root Council, you are hereby summoned to appear and explain the recent magical disturbances linked to your keeper field. Clucksworth peeked over his shoulder. Ah, the classic, you saved the village. Now kindly report for interrogation treatment. Thorn stood near the sprout, arms crossed, vines gently coiled around her ankles. They're scared. Ren folded the letter. So am I. Later that evening, he stood in the high chamber of the town hall. The walls were grown, not built. Twisted trees shaped into arches, glowing moss for light. At the front sat the three council heads, the moss woman judge, the fairy in the sun hat, and the wizard with eternal eye bags. Keeper Ren, the moss woman began, voice slow and firm. Your sprout has altered the soil network. Corruption is stirring beneath Greenroot, said the wizard. And last night, a leyline beast surfaced on your land. And now, the fairy leaned forward. You bring us this. She pointed at the table. Resting in a reinforced glass jar was the seed. Still pulsing. Still alive. You've awakened something we buried long ago. Ren held his ground. I didn't awaken it. I uncovered it. And if you buried it, maybe that's the problem. The room went still. The moss woman exhaled. Then we leave the choice to you, keeper. Destroy the sprout, the wizard said coldly. Or protect it, the fairy finished, and face what's coming. Ren stood alone in the field under a sky still bruised from sunset. The jar holding the seed sat on a nearby stump. The pulsing had slowed, but it hadn't stopped. Behind him, the sprout glowed faintly. Its bloom closed tight, like a heart protecting itself. The wind whispered through the vines curling around the edges of his plot, carrying distant murmurs from trees that shouldn't speak. Clucksworth approached quietly, for once not making jokes. They'll accept your decision either way, he said. But they won't forget it. Thorn stood in the shadows, watching the sprout with unreadable eyes. The land will follow your lead. Whether it heals or burns depends on what you choose to grow. Ren stared at the sprout. It had changed everything. It had called monsters, awakened secrets, stirred the roots of a buried past. But it had also healed soil that was dead, brought life where there was rot, made weeds bloom. And it had never hurt anyone. Not on its own. He stepped forward, placed one hand gently on the bloom-sealed top. It pulsed once beneath his palm, alive. Aware. Waiting. I won't destroy it, he said. It's not the enemy. He turned to the stump, picked up the seed in its jar, and stared into the swirling black pulse within. But this might be. Clucksworth exhaled. So we're doing the hard route. Ren smiled, tired and certain. I'm a farmer. I make things grow. I'll grow the truth if I have to. The sprout bloomed, just a little, and the stars above it blinked. The second summons didn't come on paper. It came in vines. Thorn found it first, twisting up the side of the shack, forming words in curling root script across the front door. The keeper is called. Tonight. The grove. Clucksworth tilted his head. Oh good. Root script. That's never a casual invitation. Ren stood quietly, staring at the message. The grove, that's where they buried the last failed keeper, isn't it? Thorn nodded. If you believe the stories. I really hope that part was just dramatic gardening lore. No one answered. Night fell fast. They made their way by lantern light through the overgrown path beyond the village border. The deeper they went, the more the forest changed, trees leaning in, roots shifting to guide, or trap, their steps. Then they found it. The grove. A wide clearing, ringed by twisted ancient trees. At the center, a raised stone platform with spiraling vines etched into its surface. Magical light hung above it, flickering like trapped fireflies. The council waited. All of them. The moss woman stepped forward. Keeper Arlen, the land has responded to your actions. The wizard followed. You refused destruction. You chose growth. The fairy, softly. Now the land will test if you're worthy of that choice. Ren stepped forward onto the platform. The vines curled up gently around his boots. Clucksworth whispered from the edge, "Don't die." Ren didn't look back. I'm not planning to. The platform pulsed once. Green, gold, and shadow. The trial had begun. The vines coiled around Ren's wrist like a slow heartbeat. The platform shifted. From beneath the stone, a root emerged pale, hollow, and glowing with faint white threads. It pulsed once, then lunged. Ren didn't move. The root pierced his palm. There was no blood, just light. Then he was somewhere else. The grove was gone. The night, gone. Even his body felt distant. He stood now in a sun-scorched field, alone, but not alone. Across from him knelt a man in tattered keeper robes, gripping a dead vine in one hand and a rusted hoe in the other. The land was black. Crops wilted mid-bloom. Roots curled away from the light. The sky above them cracked like dry soil. The keeper looked up. "It lied to me," he rasped. The bloom wasn't a gift. It was a warning." Ren tried to speak, but the world resisted. This wasn't memory, it was a trial by memory. The dead soil writhed out, a tendril shot from the ground and wrapped around the old keeper's throat. He didn't struggle. He only stared at Ren. "If you don't stop it, it becomes you." The vines reached for Ren now. He stepped forward, refused to flinch, and shouted, "I won't repeat your ending." The vision shattered like glass. Ren collapsed on the platform, gasping. The root released him, its glow now faint but pulsing with something new. Recognition. Ren sat at the edge of the grove, still shaking. The root had withdrawn, its trial passed for now. The council whispered among themselves under the old trees, but Ren could barely hear them. Thorn crouched beside him, uncharacteristically quiet. "You saw one, didn't you?" she finally said. "A past keeper." Ren nodded. He said the bloom lied, that it wasn't a gift, that it becomes you. Thorn looked down at the dirt, drawing a line in it with one vine-wrapped finger. "I wasn't sent here by chance, Ren." He looked up. "What do you mean?" She took a breath. "I was born from a corrupted sprout." Silence. She kept going. "My mother tended a cursed plot, refused to abandon it even when the vine spoke. She thought she could fix it. I was what grew after." Ren stared. "You're part plant, part spirit, part girl, and part something else," she said, not proud, not ashamed, just stating it. "That's why I came when your bloom activated. I felt it, like a song I hadn't heard since birth." Ren stood slowly. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't know if I was supposed to help you." She looked away. "Or replace you." A gust moved through the grove. The sprout at the edge of the field shimmered faintly in the distance. "I don't care what you're made of," Ren said. "You chose to stand with me. That's what matters." Thorn finally met his eyes. Then, softly, "Then let's finish this. Together." The council gathered again around the grove's platform, this time carrying a shallow basin of soil. It wasn't ordinary dirt. It steamed. Dark veins pulsed through it like diseased roots. The fairy's face was unreadable as she placed it before Ren. "You must grow life from this," she said. "Pure bloom. No corruption." The moss woman added, "If the plant warps, the trial fails. If it thrives, you pass." The wizard handed Ren a single pale seed. It flickered with magic and something else. Ren took it and approached the basin. His hands trembled. This wasn't planting. This was negotiation. He knelt, pressed the seed into the soil, and closed his eyes. He didn't bless the soil. He felt it. The rot, the anger, the fear laced within the roots. This soil didn't want to grow. It wanted to devour. He listened. He didn't fight it. He breathed with it. Let it rage. Let it remember. And then whispered, "Not everything that's buried is lost. You're allowed to grow again." A faint glow rose from his palm, and the seed responded. It pulsed, green and red, then slowly broke the soil. A stem. A bud. A single flower bloomed at the center, half gold, half black, but stable, balanced. The council stared in stunned silence. The wizard leaned forward. "You didn't purify the rot." Ren opened his eyes. "I accepted it." The flower swayed. Still alive. Still whole. The second test was barely over when Clucksworth vanished. One moment, he was perched smugly on a runestone, clucking something about finally getting a ribbon for emotional support. The next, he was gone, just a single feather drifting toward the cursed soil bowl. Ren didn't notice until Thorn asked, "Where's the chicken?" Panic hit like a shovel to the face. They found him in the outer ring of the grove, scratching feverishly at a leyline scar in the earth. "What are you doing?" Ren shouted. Clucksworth turned with that look, half genius, half deeply stupid. "Shortcut." "What shortcut?" "I pecked the echo node. Thought maybe I could break the land's resistance. Kickstart the third trial before it kicks you first." The ground beneath him groaned. Cracks formed. Something ancient stirred. The moss woman counselor appeared at the edge of the grove, her voice sharp with panic. You triggered a backlash. The land's memory is rejecting the trial sequence. The leyline screamed. A wave of twisted, thorny energy surged outward in a shockwave. Ren threw himself over Cluxworth just as the vines cracked and lashed, shredding the trial circle's outer ring. When the dust cleared, half the grove glowed with unstable magic. The council looked horrified. Cluxworth wheezed. Okay, bad shortcut. Thorn pulled him upright by the vest. If we survive this, you're going on a leash. Ren looked at the ruined roots. The next trial would begin, ready or not. The grove was no longer still. After Cluxworth's accidental detonation of magical protocol, the ground throbbed like it had a pulse. Roots twisted at odd angles. The trees leaned inward, and the platform cracked open, revealing a spiral staircase made of vine-wrapped stone. The fairy spoke, voice grave. This trial cannot be paused. You must ascend and speak to the Heartroot. Ren stared into the staircase. No guidance? The wizard shook his head. No language. No map. Just listen. Thorn touched his arm. I'll wait here. If you don't come back in an hour, I'll come down and carry your unconscious body out myself. Cluxworth, still singed, offered a faint, don't die. I'm not emotionally equipped. Ren gave a shaky grin and descended. It was dark. Not black, but deep. Like memory. The deeper he went, the more the world changed. Light turned green. Sound faded. And beneath his feet, he felt words, not spoken, not heard, just felt. You dig. You take. You grow what you do not understand. Ren knelt and placed a hand to the root-veined wall. I'm not trying to take. I'm trying to fix. The soil pulsed. Then why do you wake the rot? He hesitated. Then replied, because something hit it here. And buried things grow wrong. Silence. Then, you listen. That is rare. From the wall, a single flower bloomed, translucent, made of soil and memory, planted. When the time comes, we will know your answer. The staircase opened behind him. Trial 3 passed. Ren emerged from the spiral as the sky cracked with distant thunder. The grove was buzzing. Council members paced, whispered, argued. The fairy turned first. You made contact? Ren nodded. It gave me something. A flower made of memory. He held up the translucent bloom. Even sealed in a protective leaf wrap, it pulsed faintly with layered whispers. The moss woman approached slowly. The Heartroot hasn't spoken to a keeper in 3 generations. The wizard stepped forward. That doesn't mean it was right to. He turned to the other counselors. This isn't guidance. It's manipulation. The land is unstable. The ley lines are cracking. And this keeper refuses to purge the corruption. Ren frowned. You mean I refuse to burn everything I don't understand? That's exactly what I mean. Gasps rippled through the watching crowd, villagers, herbalists, wandering root watchers. They'd come to observe the trial, but now they watched a division forming. The fairy stepped beside Ren. He passed the trials. All 3. And the Heartroot trusted him. The wizard jabbed his staff into the soil. So did the last failed keeper, and he nearly merged with the rot. Tension sparked like dry straw. Thorn stepped forward. You're not fighting over method. You're fighting over control. Silence. The fairy whispered, and the land chooses. Always has. Cluxworth raised one wing. For the record, I vote we don't fight near my coop. The moss woman exhaled. Then it's decided. The council is split. From here on he walks alone. Ren looked at the flower in his hands. No, he said. I walk with the land. The first scream came from the northern woodline. Not the usual kind. Not surprise. Not pain. It was recognition. Ren, Thorn, and Cluxworth sprinted toward the sound, followed by a few trailing council members and root watchers. The trees ahead pulsed with flickering shadows, and the air reeked of rot and ozone. Then they saw it. Where once there had been only moss and rocks, now stood a twisted stalk, 10 feet tall, bark blackened, its leaves shimmering with oil-slick colors. From its core hung a pod, pulsing like a heart, and at its base, the jar that once held the black seed. Broken, empty, it grew, Thorn whispered. Without permission, without soil, it forced its way into being. The monster plant twitched, not in wind, there was no wind. It twitched like a nervous animal, like it was stretching into its own shape. Cluxworth gagged. That seed was watching, learning, waiting for the council to split. Now it knows there's no one left to stop it. Roots shot out, wrapped around trees, cracked nearby stones. One root even speared a passing bird mid-flight and absorbed it. The villagers watching from the tree line screamed and scattered, Ren stepped forward. It's not just a monster, he said. It's a keeper seed. From something ancient. And angry. Thorn looked at him. We can't let it bloom. Ren gripped his hoe tight. Then we uproot it. Before it plants us. Florian stood in the middle of the square, his cloak unwrinkled, his gloves spotless, and his ego fully fertilized. I challenge you, he said, to a duel of keepers. Ren blinked. You mean, like, magic? Plants? A shovel duel? Don't insult the art, Florian snapped, holding up a polished seed pouch. One sprout. One patch. Grown under pressure. Judged by the land itself. Thorn muttered behind Ren. He's using a pressurized growth dome. Guaranteed bloom in 5 minutes. Ren sighed. Of course he is. Clucksworth flapped onto a post. Reminder, this isn't just bragging rights. If Florian wins, the council backs him. That means your sprout? His firewood. The rules were simple. Each keeper plants one seed. The plot responds. First, to stabilize a full bloom without corruption wins. Florian's seed hit the soil and immediately hissed, sprouting into an ornate spiral vine already curling like a stage prop. Ren knelt slowly. His fingers brushed the dirt. No tricks. No boost. Just trust. He placed the memory flower the heartroot gave him into the soil. It sank. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a pulse. Roots spread. A bloom opened. White petals tinged in gold and shadow. Not perfect, but honest. The platform between them lit up. Florian's vine shimmered, then blackened at the edges. Corruption. His bloom collapsed in a wilted spiral. The grove itself pulsed with judgment. Ren's flower stood tall. The crowd gasped. The earth whispered, Keeper chosen. The grove fell quiet. Florian's withered bloom curled inward, its roots retreating like a defeated whisper. The council didn't speak. They didn't need to. The soil had chosen. Ren approached his original sprout, the one he'd nurtured from the cursed plot, protected through rot, storm, and doubt. It pulsed gently. Then it moved. Vines uncoiled. The petals, still sealed, began to unfold. Slowly. Deliberately. First green, then gold, then something new. Light and shadow danced across its center, and the air thickened, not heavy, but aware. Every flower, tree, and weed within reach leaned toward it. It bloomed, but not into a flower, into a sigil, a symbol made of light and memory, hovering above the stalk like an ancient crest. The moss woman gasped. The mark of the first keeper. The fairy whispered, it was never just a plant. It was a seal. Thorn stepped beside Ren, eyes wide. You didn't grow something. You unlocked it. The sprout's roots pulsed beneath the earth, sending out waves along the leyline veins. Far off in the hills, other fields lit up. Forgotten groves shimmered. Cursed woods stirred. The world remembered. Clucksworth clutched his feathers. I knew you were trouble. Ren watched the sigil spin. Not a weapon, not a monster. A message. The land had chosen its keeper, and the real story was just beginning. The grove fell quiet. Florian's withered bloom curled inward, its roots retreating like a defeated whisper. The council didn't speak. They didn't need to. The soil had chosen. Ren approached his original sprout, the one he'd nurtured from the cursed plot, protected through rot, storm, and doubt. It pulsed gently. Then it moved. Vines uncoiled. The petals, still sealed, began to unfold. Slowly. Deliberately. First green, then gold, then something new. Light and shadow danced across its center, and the air thickened, not heavy, but aware. Every flower, tree, and weed within reach leaned toward it. It bloomed, but not into a flower, into a sigil, a symbol made of light and memory, hovering above the stalk like an ancient crest. The moss woman gasped. The mark of the first keeper. The fairy whispered, it was never just a plant. It was a seal. Thorn stepped beside Ren, eyes wide. You didn't grow something. You unlocked it. The sprout's roots pulsed beneath the earth, sending out waves along the leyline veins. Far off in the hills, other fields lit up. Forgotten groves shimmered. Cursed woods stirred. The world remembered. Clucksworth clutched his feathers. I knew you were trouble. Ren watched the sigil spin. Not a weapon, not a monster. A message. The land had chosen its keeper, and the real story was just beginning. The thread of light led them beyond the last stone markers of green root, past the edge of known maps, into the overgrown wilderness locals simply called the Fade. No one crossed the Fade willingly. Too many stories. Too few returners. Thorn walked at the front, her vines twitching with each step. The forest here isn't natural. Too quiet. Too still. Rain kept one hand on his pack and the other brushing the light thread that guided them. It shimmered faintly, cutting through the fog like a compass line etched in magic. Clucksworth muttered from Ren's shoulder. There used to be border runes here. Old ones. I don't see a single trace. That's when they found the tree. It wasn't just dead, it had been drained. Hollow from the inside out, bark crumbled like old paper, and the roots beneath it had curled away from the soil, as if trying to escape. Carved into the trunk was a symbol. Not from the sigil language, just one word, burned deep. Second. Ren knelt beside it. The second bloom? Thorn stepped back. Were its remains. The golden thread twisted once, uncertain, then rerouted to the left, veering deeper into tangled brush. Ren stood. Something tried to bury it. Clucksworth squinted. Or it bloomed, and something ripped it out. The forest didn't answer, but it felt hungry. They made camp near a half-fallen stone wall, the last remnants of an outpost no one remembered. The golden thread hovered in the air just a few feet away, pulsing softly as if impatient. Thorns surrounded their resting area with vine warts. Clucksworth drew a circle of crushed glowing herbs. Ren fed the fire, though the wood burned with a strangely green flame. Then the ground groaned, not loudly, not all at once, just deep, alive. Thorn's eyes snapped open. That's not wind. Ren pressed a hand to the dirt. It quivered. Clucksworth stood completely still. We're on it. Ren frowned. On what? The rot. He was right. A crack formed near the edge of camp, small at first, then splitting like a wound. From it seeped a black-green mist, and beneath that movement, roots. Writhing. Not trying to grow. Trying to escape. Ren stepped forward, but Thorn stopped him with a vine across the chest. No. It's not ours. It's not from here. Then where? She pointed to the golden thread. It had dimmed slightly, as if afraid. Ren stared into the mist. This rot, it's chasing the keys. We're following, Clucksworth said quietly. Like a predator that remembers what it once lost. Ren looked at the trees. They're not just buried. They're being hunted. By noon the next day, the thread led them to ruins. A village, or what remained of one. No signs of fire. No broken walls. No bones. Just absence. Empty homes swallowed by vines, stone walkways overtaken by moss, and wells choked with dust instead of water. But the strangest thing, no roots. Not a single one. Every tree stump, every plant, even the grass cut off at the base. Neatly. Surgically. Ren knelt at one. The soil wasn't dry. It was hollow. Thorn joined him, placing her hand on the earth. Something pulled everything out. Cleanly. Not just plants. The ley line's gone too. Clucksworth hovered beside a broken statue in the square, a weathered depiction of a sprout cradled in open hands. The base read, to the third. Ren stood. So this was a keeper's site. Was, Thorn repeated. Now it's rootless. Magicless. And forgotten. Suddenly the air snapped with pressure. The thread pulsed, then jerked downward. Ren turned toward a crumbled well at the center of the square. The light dove into it like a fish returning to water. Thorn's expression darkened. It's down there. Clucksworth peered into the dark. I don't suppose we could not go into the cursed underground plant crypt? No one answered, because the silence below them was breathing. The well wasn't deep. It was deep enough. Ren descended first, the golden thread guiding his steps like a lifeline made of memory. Thorn followed, her vines wrapped tightly around her wrists, pulsing faintly with protective glow. Clucksworth, begrudgingly, rode Ren's shoulder with a tiny glowing lantern strapped to his back like a chicken-shaped miner. The tunnel beneath wasn't man-made. It was grown. Winding roots shaped the walls, curved, ribbed, silent. No rot here. No corruption. Just waiting. And then they reached it. A cavern opened beneath them, lit by faint spores drifting in the air like fireflies. In the center, half buried in a cradle of roots, was a bloom, bigger than Ren's. Woven in silver, veined in mossy green. Its petals were sealed tight, no sigil, no light. But it breathed. Soft, slow inhales that stirred the earth. Clucksworth whispered, it's alive. Thorn touched one of the petals. It's dormant, preserved by the land itself. Ren stepped closer. The golden thread wrapped around it once, pulsed, then vanished, absorbed into the bloom. The air tightened. The bloom didn't open, but a voice echoed. 3 of 13. Rooted, but watched. Thorn stepped back. It spoke. Ren stared. It knows. Then, from the walls, a crack. The roots recoiled. Something darker had followed. It came from the crack. At first, just a hiss. Then a root, not green, not glowing, but gray, dry and pulsing with unnatural life. slithered through the cavern wall like a worm burrowing into bone. Thorn's vines reacted immediately, forming a barrier around the dormant third bloom. Ren stepped in front of it, hoe drawn. It followed us. No, Cluxworth said, eyes wide. It followed the thread. It's hunting the keys directly now. The cavern walls began to shudder. Roots that had once cradled the sleeping bloom snapped violently, retreating like nerves severed by rot. And then it came through. A creature, not beast, not plant, but hollow, twisted vines forming a loose, spiraling body. No face, no voice, just a hole in its chest where something had been ripped out. From within the hollow, glowing seed-like nodes hung like organs, pulsing with stolen energy. Ren charged first. The hoe struck vines and passed through. The creature wasn't solid. It was grown from memory and rot, animated by something older than either. Thorn tried to bind it with living vines. They withered instantly. Cluxworth hurled a glowing mushroom. It sizzled and vanished into the hollow. Ren stood between it and the third bloom, panting. It's not here to destroy the bloom. Thorn nodded grimly. It's here to replace it. The hollow advanced. Its form shimmered with every step, fluctuating between twisted root, creeping mist, and a flickering shadow of something that once was. Ren backed up, putting himself between it and the sealed bloom. His grip on the hoe tightened. It's trying to overwrite the bloom, he said. Like bad soil leaching the memory from the land. Thorn's vines curled around her arms, glowing faint gold green. We're not letting that happen. Cluxworth flapped up, dropping a bundle of fire root spores near the creature. Say hello to itchy magic. The spores detonated in a puff of green flame, but the hollow only shifted, absorbing the energy. It's not feeding on life, Ren realized. It's feeding on forgotten life. He knelt quickly, touching the soil beneath the bloom. Memory. It was still here? Still alive. He whispered the same words the heartroot had taught him. Nothing buried is lost if remembered. The ground responded. A glow pulsed from beneath the bloom. Suddenly, ghostly images surged upward, memories of the village above, people planting, laughing, protecting the sprout that now slept. The hollow flinched. Its form unraveled slightly. Thorn extended both arms. Then we bury it in truth. Her vines struck, not to bind, but to mark. Sigils bloomed along the creature's body, symbols of old keepers, and one by one, it began to dissolve, until nothing remained but a single, blackened root. Ren picked it up carefully, cold, brittle, empty. He looked at the third bloom, still sleeping, but now smiling. They surfaced from the well by dawn. The third bloom still slept beneath, sealed in light and protected by fresh roots that responded to memory now, not fear. Ren held the blackened root in one hand, its form brittle, lifeless, and crumbling like burned parchment. It wouldn't grow again. But it left a warning. Thorn pressed a hand to the dirt near the ruined village and closed her eyes. The rot's adapting. It's not just chasing the blooms, it's trying to replace them. One by one. Cluxworth paced the stone edge of the square. And the land remembers only what it's allowed to. That thing. It was a mold of memory. A fake. Ren looked up. The golden thread hadn't returned, but something else had. A whisper. Soft. Faint. Barely there. But it pulled. Not like the thread before. This was more subtle. A tug in the air. A pressure in the soil. Something that called not through sight, but recognition. Ren turned toward the mountains to the east. Beyond the fade. Beyond even the old wood. There, he said. I can feel it. The fourth. Thorn nodded once. Another bloom. No, Ren said. He looked at the sky, light filtering through fog and memory. A trial. A harder one. Cluxworth groaned. Why can't these things ever bloom near hot springs and tea carts? Ren smiled faintly, because truth doesn't root in comfort. They weren't the only ones following the blooms. That became clear 2 days into the mountains. The terrain was rough, the air thinner, and the soil rocky, but the whispers guiding them never faltered. Faint pulses beneath their boots, a rhythm in the wind. The fourth was near, but then came the signs. Burned shrubs in perfect circles, dead roots, slashed mid-growth, symbols etched into tree bark, mirror images of the sigils Run had seen, but reversed. Thorn stopped suddenly, her eyes narrowing. They're not rot. Ren looked around. Then who? Cluxworth landed beside a cracked stone with deep claw-like marks across it. Keepers who broke, or were broken. They saw them at dusk, figures cloaked in bark-wrapped armor, faces hidden behind cracked sprout masks. They moved like shadows through the trees, fast, efficient, silent. One stepped forward into the fading light that he bore no crest, no life in his roots. Just a staff topped with a twisted bloom and a voice like stone. You should not be walking the path. It's meant to end. Ren stepped forward. Who are you? The figure tilted his head. We were keepers. Until we saw what the blooms awaken. Cluxworth whispered, they're not just trying to stop the rot. They're trying to stop you. Thorn said flatly. The hunter raised his staff. Before you finish what the first keeper started. They didn't fight. Not yet. The keeper hunters vanished back into the forest after delivering their warning, like shadows exhaled by the mountains themselves. Ren, Thorn, and Cluxworth moved cautiously until they reached the edge of a ravine, unnaturally wide, unnaturally deep. There, the whispers stopped, not because they had arrived, because the land had nothing left to say. At the base of the ravine were the remnants of a temple, ancient stones swallowed by collapsed trees and time. In its center, a burned ring of soil, dead, cracked, lifeless, no roots, no glyphs, just ash. Ren knelt and touched the earth. It was cold. Thorn stood beside him, her expression unreadable. This was the first bloom's sight. Cluxworth hovered near the edge of the ring. But it's gone. Scorched. Ren looked deeper, beneath the soot, past the brittle crust of the ground. He found a single, unburned petal, veined in silver, still pulsing, alive. He held it up. It was destroyed, but not erased. Thorn nodded slowly. The first left something behind, and in the stone wall just beyond the circle, nearly buried under lichen and shadow, a line appeared, etched in an old, faded language. To bloom is to awaken the war. Ren stood slowly. Cluxworth flinched. Oh good. The peaceful plant apocalypse. Ren looked to the horizon. We need to find the fourth. The mountain winds carried no birdsong, only dust, only silence. Ren led the way now, guided not by light or thread, but by pressure. A soft pull in his bones, a rhythm in his steps. The whispers of the fourth bloom were not loud, but they were constant. Behind him, Thorn moved carefully. The terrain here was unpredictable, roots grew where there should be none, and rocks cracked as if remembering something. Cluxworth flapped ahead and circled back. No monsters yet. No blooms. No civilization. Just dread. Great job picking the scenic route. Rand didn't laugh. Not because he wasn't listening, but because he was. Every step felt like walking across buried names. Like the mountain itself was watching, judging. Then they reached the ridge. Below it, a deep basin scarred by centuries. No towns. No roads. Just overgrown ruins and glimmering patches of unnatural color. Thorn narrowed her eyes. That's not soil. That's residue. Ren scanned the valley. That's where the fourth bloom is. How do you know? Ren held up the petal from the first bloom. It glowed, not brightly, but warmly. Resonating, Cluxworth sighed. So we're walking into a dead zone that smells like cursed soup. Ren took the first step down the slope. No, he said. We're walking into history. And it hasn't forgiven us yet. The basin wasn't dead. It was remembering. Every step Ren took released something, an echo, a shape, a shimmer of life long gone but not entirely lost. Ghost roots flickered through the soil like nerves sparking back to life. The trees here were crooked, leaning in unnatural angles, as if they'd once bent to protect something, and failed. Cluxworth landed on a toppled statue half swallowed by vines. Why does everything in this place look like it lost a war it wasn't invited to? Ren crouched near a blackened pillar. A symbol, half erased, glowed faintly beneath the grime. Thorn traced it with her fingertip. Keeper sigil. Early style. This place, it was one of the first outer watch points. For what? Ren asked. She didn't answer, because something answered for her. The ground pulsed, not rot, not life. Pain. A memory burst from the earth, not visible, not loud, but felt. Screams. Burning soil. Keepers fleeing with sigils ripped from their arms. Something had torn through this place like it wanted the very land to forget it ever existed. Ren clenched his jaw. This valley didn't fall. It was erased, Thorn said softly. The petal in Ren's hand pulsed once more, and suddenly, it pulled. Strong. Urgent. Cluxworth flapped back. Something's awake. Ren stood slowly. No. Something's waiting. They found her beneath the roots of a broken shrine. Not buried. Not sleeping. Standing. The fourth keeper, encased in crystal-veined bark like a statue carved by time itself, one hand resting on a dormant sprout. Her robes were tattered but fused into the root around her. Hair long and laced with vine. Eyes closed. Alive, but sealed. Ren froze. The air around her felt thick, not corrupted, not pure preserved. A heartbeat trapped in amber, Thorn approached slowly. She didn't fall in battle. She merged with the bloom, Ren whispered. The sprout beneath her hand pulsed faintly as he stepped closer. Cluxworth circled above. Okay, so this one rooted herself to stop. What, exactly? A tantrum from the sky? Then the wind changed. The sprout reacted to Ren's presence. The ground shook, just enough to shift the dirt, to clear a carving beneath the sealed keeper's feet. A glyph. Old. Complex. Ren didn't recognize it, but Thorn did. It's a prison rune, she said. Not to trap her, to trap what was chasing her. Ren's eyes widened. You mean she used the bloom to seal something inside herself? The sprout pulsed again, once, then again, and the keeper's fingers twitched. Cluxworth clucked. Nope. Absolutely not. No magical sleepwalking root ghosts. Thank you. Ren took a step forward. Let her wake. Ren placed his hand against the sprout's bark. Warm. Pulsing, not like a heart, but like a drumbeat. A call from deep within the land, echoing through time. The sealed keeper flinched, then exhaled. The bark cracked, not violently, but like old wood giving way to spring. Threads of light unraveled from her arms and legs, releasing decades, centuries of tension. Vines loosened, dust fell. Then her eyes opened. Soft, pale green. No fear. Just recognition. You're late, she said, voice dry like wind through leaves. Ren stepped back, stunned. You're alive. I'm still here, she said. Not the same thing. Thorn watched her carefully. You sealed yourself to contain something. The keeper nodded. The fourth bloom was tainted before I arrived. The rot wasn't chasing it. It grew inside it. I didn't destroy it. I anchored it inside me. But the prison is weakening. Cluxworth muttered, classic plant curse logic. Can't just toss it into a volcano. Gotta merge souls and wait centuries. The keeper stepped forward, her sprout pulsing behind her. The fifth will awaken soon. And if no one stops it, the ground cracked. A ripple tore through the valley. Above, the sky darkened, not with clouds, but with roots. Twisting, skyward vines arcing toward them like veins from the heavens. The keeper's eyes narrowed. It's already begun. The roots in the sky weren't descending. They were reaching. High above the valley, clouds tore apart in silence as massive black-green tendrils split the heavens like cracks in the firmament. They pulsed in rhythm. One Ren recognized all too well. The fifth bloom was awake. And it wasn't hiding. Ren stepped beside the fourth keeper. Where is it? She didn't point. She closed her eyes, and the answer came not as direction, but pressure. Pain. Deep in the spine. It's not growing from the land, she whispered. It's replacing it. Thorn's expression darkened. That's not a bloom. It's an overwrite. Cluxworth narrowed his eyes. It's not planting roots. It's planting commands. The valley shook again, this time from above. A chunk of floating stone, once a mountain peak, plummeted into the far side of the basin, blanketed in corrupted roots. From within the crash, a twisted stalk rose, massive, twisting, open at the top like a screaming mouth made of petals and bone. Ren's hand went to his hoe. It's not hiding anymore. The fourth keeper turned to him, face calm. It never was. It's been waiting for the land to choose a keeper again. She stepped back, and now it's coming to test you. Ren's sprout pulse glowed from his pack. S.O. did the petal. Then let's answer it. The fifth bloom did not arrive. It declared. Waves of root light surged outward from its monstrous stalk. Not slow. Not creeping. Fast. Intentional. Like lightning that refused to burn out. Trees cracked open and reshaped into thorn-fanged horrors. Rocks twisted upward into bone-like spires. It wasn't spreading. It was claiming. Ren, Thorn, Cluxworth, and the fourth keeper stood at the cliff's edge as the valley reshaped itself into a battlefield of warped life, and the bloom, towering and wide as a castle, tilted toward them, watching. We're in its domain now, Thorn muttered. It doesn't need to hide behind rot. It is the rot. The fourth keeper's eyes glowed faintly green. This isn't a test of strength. It's a test of memory, of truth. If you face it with doubt, it will overwrite you. Cluxworth hurled a pebble at the bloom. It disintegrated midair. Noted, he said. Absolutely no room for existential crises. Ren stepped forward. We've been fixing broken sprouts, fighting what grew from pain. But this is different. This is the source, the keeper said. The fifth bloom shuddered and launched a volley. Twisting vines, thorn seeds like darts, spores that crackled with corrupted light. Ren raised his hoe. Thorn's vines exploded into motion. Clucksworth squawked a war cry that sounded suspiciously like regret. The battle for the land's future had begun. The first strike came fast. Ren's hoe deflected a twisting thorn lash, the force of it sliding him back through dirt. Thorn coiled vines into a wall, catching a volley of barbed spores mid-flight. Clucksworth flung glowing mushroom charges into the advancing rootlings, yelling, "I'm just a chicken with opinions." But they were being pushed back. The fifth bloom didn't just attack, it rewrote. Wherever its roots landed, the ground reshaped. Trees unraveled into bonewood towers. Soil shimmered and turned gray. The very memory of the land was vanishing beneath its influence. Ren stumbled, and something hit him, not a vine, not a weapon, but a vision. A flicker. He saw himself, burned out, forgotten. A field with no bloom, no name. Just a hole where something might have been. "No," he growled. "I'm still here." The sprout in his satchel pulsed. The first bloom's petal glowed, and behind him, the fourth keeper raised her staff. "You need more than strength," she said. "You need to anchor this land in what it was." She drove her staff into the dirt. From the contact, memories surged, echoes of past keepers, living roots, harvests, voices, laughter. Not illusions, imprints. Ren stepped forward, held the glowing petal high, and spoke. "You are not the only thing that grows. We remember, and we write back." A new sprout burst from the ground beside him, glowing gold and green. A memory bloom, and it fought beside him. From the moment Ren's memory bloom unfurled, the battlefield changed. The rot no longer advanced unchecked. Wherever the bloom's petals pulsed, corrupted soil hesitated, trembled, and rewound. Trees regrew limbs once burned. Stones returned to their original shape. Grass whispered back into color. Then the root-born emerged, not summoned. Remembered, figures rose from the ground. Not ghosts, not soldiers, but manifestations of the land's will. Each shaped from old earth, glowing roots, and ancestral memory. Some bore farming tools, others sprout staves, and one, tall, moss-covered, and silent, had the same glyph on its chest as the first keeper's mark. Clucksworth's beak dropped. "Are those memory warriors?" Thorn's eyes narrowed. "They're not illusions. They're echoes. Everything the land remembers, it's rising now." The fifth bloom reacted immediately. It screamed, not through sound, but through vibration. Reality around it rippled. Several root-born disintegrated mid-step, rewritten out of existence. Ren pressed forward. The memory bloom beside him bloomed a second time, larger, brighter. Each pulse strengthened the echoes, stabilized them. "They're fading," Ren shouted. "Then anchor them." Thorn called. Ren plunged the first bloom's petal into the ground. The earth answered. The root-born stopped flickering. One step beside Ren. An old woman. A farmer. A keeper. She didn't speak, but she raised her hand to the fifth bloom, and from it, vines of pure memory launched skyward. They stood together. Ren, Thorn, Clucksworth, the fourth keeper, and a circle of root-born keepers, drawn from the memory of the land itself, shapes of past lives, guardians long buried. Each glowing with leyline light and tethered by the memory bloom pulsing at the center. Across the battlefield, the fifth bloom thrashed. It grew taller, louder, wronger, petals curled like scythes. Its roots lashed through sky and stone. From within its core, a shape began to form, not a keeper, but a shell. Something trying to become one. Mockery through imitation. The rot wanted to wear their face. Ren gritted his teeth. "We can't let it finish growing." The fourth keeper raised her hand. "Then we cut the root before it blooms." The root-born charged, not as soldiers, but as stories. Every movement was a retelling of something real, a harvest, a sacrifice, a stand. The land didn't just remember them, it needed them. Thorn unleashed a spiral of thorn vines, each inscribed with keeper glyphs. Clucksworth lobbed a sack of spores into the fifth's mouth. "Eat compost, you overgrown pretender." Ren ran forward, memory bloom pulsing beside him like a heartbeat. He wasn't just a keeper now, he was a continuation. And as the fifth raised a thorn-tipped root like a spear, Ren shouted, "The land chose me. Now I choose it back," and drove his hoe into the earth. A shockwave split the sky. The shockwave rippled across the valley, through stone, through soil, through story. Every glyph glowed. Every sprout trembled. The fifth bloom recoiled, not from pain, but from recognition. It remembered this, because it had felt it once before. The seal.Ren strike hadn't just damaged the battlefield, it pierced the layer beneath it. A long-buried boundary set by ancient keepers. One that was never meant to be touched again. The ground beneath the fifth bloom split, not just cracked, peeled. And from the chasm, something moved. Something older than the rot. The fourth keeper gasped. It's breaking through. Ren backed away. The seal wasn't holding the bloom. Thorn's voice sharpened. It was holding what the bloom was feeding. Clucksworth flapped backward, feathers frayed. I thought this was the final boss. What do you mean there's a basement? The fifth bloom shrieked, not in rage, but in reverence. It bent downward. Toward the split. Toward its root. And the voice that rose from the depth was not human, not keeper, not even plant. But it knew them. The land remembers wrong. Let me correct it. The bloom began to bloom again. Ren's eyes widened. The battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. The ground beneath Ren's feet pulsed, and for the first time since awakening the bloom, the land recoiled. From the ruptured seal, a deep hum echoed outward. Not a sound, but a pressure that made the bones feel brittle. The memory bloom dimmed. Thorn took a step back, eyes narrowed. That's not part of the fifth. The fourth keeper raised her staff, whispering in the old tongue. It's older, buried long before the blooms. This wasn't just a battlefield, it was a prison. From the crack, a vine-like appendage emerged, pitch black, but unlike the corrupted roots above. It didn't move like something living. It moved like something remembering what it once was. Ren's grip on his hoe tightened. We woke something we shouldn't have. The fifth bloom shrieked, a sound that wasn't a scream, but a signal. In response, the sky flashed blood red. The corrupted basin trembled. Across the field, rootborn began to flicker, their forms unstable. Clucksworth chirped nervously from a fractured root. I vote we reseal it. Anyone know how to reseal? But Ren knew the answer before he asked. They had broken the seal. Now, the land would remember everything, even what it had tried to forget. The vine-like appendage writhed upward, dragging with it a mass of dark bark and bone-like fiber. Shaped like a root but hollow at its center, its edges lined with crumbling runes older than the keepers themselves. It moved slowly, not because it was weak, but because it had no reason to rush. Thorn stepped between it and Run, her vines drawn tight like blades. That's not a creature. It's a leftover. The fourth keeper's face had drained of color. The hollow root. It was part of the first collapse. A forgotten failure, sealed with the promise it would never grow again. But it had grown, twisted under centuries of silence, fed not by sunlight or memory, but by regret. The fifth bloom's core began to react. Its petals split wider, almost fearful, as if recognizing what had stirred below. Ren stared at the hollow root as its hollowed face turned toward him. He didn't see eyes, but somehow he knew it was looking through him. It didn't want the land. It wanted the bloom. And suddenly, for the first time, Ren wasn't sure if the fifth bloom was the enemy or the final shield against something worse. The battlefield paused, not in peace, but in shared confusion. The fifth bloom pulsed, not in aggression, but warning. Its corrupted vines retracted from the hollow root's emergence, almost withdrawing. Ren glanced between the two. It's afraid. The fourth keeper nodded grimly. The fifth may be corrupted, but it still obeys the cycle. The hollow root does not. It's a rupture. A growth without memory, without meaning. Thorn's expression darkened. It wants to bloom, without roots. Suddenly, the hollow root lashed upward, a shriek tearing through the leyline air. One of the remaining rootborn was caught mid-chant, shattered into sparks before finishing their defense. Another tried to anchor the memory bloom, but the light dimmed with each strike. Ren, the fourth keeper called, her voice low and steady. We have to decide. Do we finish the fifth bloom, or let it fight with us? Ren didn't answer at first. His hand hovered over the petal of the first bloom. Then his voice came, quiet but certain. We don't fight for the fifth. We fight for the land. But if the bloom wants to survive, it fights on our terms. And as the hollow root lunged forward again, the corrupted bloom released a new vine, not at them, but at the hollow, not allies, but for one moment, aligned. The fifth bloom lowered one massive vine, its pulsing core dimming to a sickly amber glow. From the edges of its fractured petals, symbols twisted, not the usual glyphs of corruption, but older ones, half forgotten. A gesture, a signal. Ren stepped forward, clutching the memory bloom petal like a torch. You want to live? He said aloud, staring into the trembling eye of the fifth. Then remember with us. Thorn's jaw clenched. This is madness. It's survival, said the fourth keeper. And maybe the only way. As if in answer, a tendril of the fifth's core coiled down, and touched the memory bloom. A pulse surged out, bright white crashing into rotting red, light twisting with decay. For a heartbeat, the entire valley went silent. Then, boom, the roots of the fifth lashed outward, not at Ren or the keepers, but at the hollow root, wrapping around it like chains. The hollow writhed, a soundless scream shaking the earth. Its body flickered, momentarily exposing the void within. It didn't bleed. It didn't break. But it felt pain. Behind Ren, the rootborn rallied, glowing brighter than before. Thorn watched the fifth bloom with suspicion, but nodded once, sharply. We ride this storm. But the second it turns, Ren didn't let her finish. I'll tear it out myself. And with that, they turned as one, toward the deeper rot now trying to claw its way fully into the world. The hollow root screamed again, and this time, the fifth bloom answered with a roar of its own, its vines gripping tighter, petals contorting, forcing the dark tendrils back into the cracked seal. Magic twisted the battlefield into a spiral of memory and madness, but something was wrong. Ren could feel it first, not in his body, but in the soil. The memory was slipping. The bloom wasn't sharing its strength. It was consuming it, Thorn shouted. It's draining the rootborn. One by one, the glowing spirits of the past faltered. Their lights dimmed as the fifth bloom pulled their essence into itself, siphoning ancestral magic through the memory bloom's tether. The fourth keeper staggered. It's not helping us. It's feeding. Ren turned, eyes wide. The fifth bloom's once amber glow had shifted, now deep gold veined with red. Not pure, not free. A pact, Ren muttered, but not a promise. Cluxworth landed beside him, puffed and tense. I told you this team-up smelled funny. A rootborn collapsed beside them, disintegrating into petals of light. The fifth surged, stronger. The hollow was reeling. Yes, but so were they. Thorn raised her arms to sever the connection, but it was too late. The bloom had tasted power beyond its own corrupted cycle, and now it wanted more. The fifth bloom, once an enemy, now an uneasy ally, began to swell. Not just in size, but in intent. Ren watched as its vines shimmered with stolen memory. Ghostly echoes of rootborn keepers were drawn into its pulsing core like fuel, their forms unraveling with silent resistance. The bloom's corruption wasn't spreading, it was evolving. The hollow root thrashed violently, retreating down the cracked seal. But the fifth didn't stop. It pressed harder, wrapping roots of memory and decay together, forcing the hollow to kneel. We're not just watching it fight, Thorn said bitterly. We're letting it feed on us. Ren's knuckles whitened around his hoe. We didn't win. We're being absorbed. The fourth keeper dropped to one knee, eyes glowing faintly as leyline strain racked her. It's learned. It's adapting the rootborn's link to the land. That's why the spirits are vanishing. It's not memory anymore. It's possession. The memory bloom flickered erratically now, its connection unstable. Ren tried to speak to it again, plead with it, but the petal in his hand had darkened, the glyph spiraling inward. Cluxworth chirped in warning. A single word formed in Ren's thoughts, unspoken and chilling. Rebloom, whatever was rising now. It wasn't just fighting the hollow. It was preparing to replace everything. The fifth bloom convulsed once, then spread its petals wide. Not as a flower, but like a golden red light surged from its core, and from the remnants of the rootborn, new shapes began to form, distorted echoes of the keepers it had consumed. They moved like spirits but shimmered with no warmth. Their faces were familiar, but wrong. Thorn backed away slowly. Those aren't rootborn anymore. They're reflections, whispered the fourth keeper, created from stolen memory, but loyal only to the bloom. The memory bloom in Ren's hand flickered violently, then went cold. Its pulse gone. Its magic silenced. And then he heard it. Keeper Ren, a voice not his own, not spoken aloud, but inside, deep in the roots of him. You remember too much. He dropped the petal. It crumbled in his palm like ash. The reblooming had begun. The fifth bloom no longer resembled a living thing. It had become an engine. Memory and corruption intertwined, rewriting the land's past, consuming the truth beneath layers of survival instinct and betrayal. Even the hollow root began to withdraw, not defeated, but disturbed. As if sensing the birth of something it feared, Ren looked up at the twisting petals spiraling above. This wasn't the land healing. This was the land rewriting itself, and the keepers might no longer have a place in it. The battlefield warped. Where once there had been soil, memory, and stone, now there were mirrored roots, twisting through the air like veins across a broken sky. The fifth bloom's new echoes moved in unison, like dancers in a ritual no one remembered learning. Their movements rewrote space. Crops withered, sprouting again into unnatural forms. Leyline paths fractured. Rerouted point. One of the new echo keepers turned toward Ren, his own reflection staring back, hollow-eyed and cruelly serene. Thorn hurled a sigil vine at it, but the strike passed through as if it had never existed. "They're not real," she spat. "They're memory puppets." "No," Ren murmured. "They're replacements." Clucksworth launched into the air, trying to drop a glowing mushroom into the bloom's mouth. It fizzled before contact, absorbed mid-flight by shimmering memory light. The fourth keeper gasped, a line of root light running down her arm. "The pact is breaking the leyline structure. It's rewriting the land's memory. We'll vanish. Not die, be erased." Ren stepped forward. He felt every step fight him, as if the ground didn't want him anymore. The bloom's new world had no need for a keeper. He raised his hoe. "I don't care what it remembers. I'm still here." And for the first time, the corrupted echoes paused, not in fear, but recognition. The land remembered him, even if it no longer wanted to. The memory bloom crackled in Ren's hand, fading, fraying, but not gone. Though its light had dimmed, something within it lingered. A thread. A tether. He looked to the fifth bloom, now a monstrous spiral of memory and hunger. Its false keepers stood like statues, watching with quiet judgment. The hollow root had sunk beneath the earth, no longer resisting. Not out of defeat, but because it wanted this rebirth to unfold. The land would be remade, but only if Ren let it happen. "Destroy the fifth," Thorn growled, her voice ragged. "Now, before it fully roots this lie." The fourth keeper wavered, eyes shut, feeling the leyline distortion. "If we sever it, the memory collapse could erase everything, us, the land, the truth. But if we don't," Ren gritted his teeth, "this wasn't a question of power. It was a question of history. Erase the corruption, and maybe the land healed, but lost all it remembered. Let it remain, and survival continued, but under a rewritten truth that had no place for them." He looked at the memory bloom, flickering, fragile, waiting, and at the fifth, pulsing, patient, hungry. Then Ren lifted his hoe and said only one word: "Enough." The roots around him coiled. The echoes turned. The land listened, and everything waited for his next strike. Ren's hoe came down, not on the fifth bloom, not on the memory bloom, but into the ground. The impact echoed like thunder. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the earth shivered. Roots, true roots, burst upward from beneath the corrupted field. Pale, ancient, and untouched by either the hollow or the fifth, they surged like veins of forgotten blood. The ley line beneath responded with a desperate flicker, surging once, twice, before stabilizing into a dull red pulse. Thorn stumbled back. "What did you do?" "I didn't attack the bloom," Ren said. "I called the land back to itself." The fifth bloom shrieked, not in pain, but in rejection. The new root work was not part of it. It hadn't grown this. Couldn't control it. The memory it tried to rewrite had fought back. From the rupture in the soil, something else began to rise. Not a flower, not a monster. A shape of light and soil, of keeper and seed, of memory that had not forgotten him. The echoes began to glitch, faces shifting, limbs unraveling. The fifth bloom started to recoil, and then crack. The sky tore open above the valley. Not light, not darkness, but void. And through it, a voice not heard since the first collapse. "You were never meant to return." Ren turned toward the sky, gripping his hoe. Eyes wide, mouth dry, because the real enemy had just arrived.